This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Welcome again to another exciting episode that we're covering in this series of CXOs, founders and co-founders. I think this episode has got divergence between the interests of the CXOs, founders and co-founders, and I also feel it's got an interest towards how marketing team runs in different organizations, because a traditional marketing team would run as a full-fledged version, but when we are talking about fractional marketing, I think it's a very different sort of a concept that David has introduced, who's our guest tonight. David has already been a podcast guest on Ultimate Global Podcast before, talking about a whole set of different things. And I guess that was only between you and me, David, but this time we also have George involved. So that's going to be an interesting discussion. I know people know about you, David, but do you want to introduce yourself and just talk to us about what Red Basket does?
Sure. So happy to be on here for the second time, first of all. This has changed my mindset completely. I want to be the world champion for the person who's on this podcast the most. So mark my words, I want to be a frequent flyer. But anyways, so Red Basket is 4 years old. Actually, we just celebrated our 4th year last month, and we got together this previous weekend with co-founders, and we extended it to our families to celebrate and to enjoy ourselves, and it was a good time. Red Basket was founded out of the idea that my co-founder and I both came from successful SaaS backgrounds as content creators, content writers, working within marketing teams, fast-moving marketing teams. It's important to note that when you work in fast-moving marketing teams, the rate at which you learn things is really intense. So what you can learn in 1 year or 2 years, I would say, is multiplied. So I had gotten out of SaaS I got out of the company where I was working, and I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to see if what we did there was scalable across multiple clients at the same time. And so we did a year of proof of concept, and it was. We made a little bit of money. More importantly, we made a bit of money for our customers that we were running POC with. And that's when we said, aha, okay, let's do this. Let's do Red Basket. Let's form a content marketing agency for B2B SaaS. Now it's evolved.
That's very interesting. So what do you see as some of the benefits of fractional marketing, and do you see that from a cost effectiveness point of view, it's beneficial for especially the small companies and startups to run this concept of fractional marketing? And do you think they're already doing a bit of that? Because I see that a lot of startups are already doing fractional marketing. Maybe they don't know about the term, but they're doing it intentionally or unintentionally, isn't it?
Yeah. So I am the fractional head of content across brands. So I guess I missed that part in explaining Red Basket. But so a couple of years ago, we kind of realized that this is the way forward. It's much more cost effective for businesses. You get a world of expertise airdropped into your business literally overnight. There's also, I think off of the back of COVID layoffs in the B2B SaaS industry, people were shaken. They didn't want to go back and serve one brand anymore because it's such it can be volatile. You can be unemployed tomorrow. So I think even really seasoned fractional marketers, fractional heads of content, fractional digital marketers, fractional CMOs, why serve one master? You could lose your job tomorrow because the market is the market and it's going to do what it's going to do. And so what happened is, I think you can find some of really talented CMOs or other marketers in the market who are extremely talented at growing businesses, and you can't hire them as full-time. They don't want it. Why would they? So I think there's a trend now that this field is growing. More and more people. I think a lot of people call it gig workers, but when we imagine gig, we imagine Gen Z, just wanting to not work so many hours. But in fact, I'm 44. I love being a gig worker. I don't want to work full-time for somebody else. So I think that's part of maybe the mindset behind it. Maybe it's up to me and others to educate the market on what the word fractional means.
How do you see this concept, George, when we talk about fractional marketing? I think this got a linkage with the last podcast we did with Tim Duggan, where we're talking about working backwards. And we were talking about define your own life and then define the work that you do and then define the money that you earn. I think fractional marketing is talking about the same kind of notion where it says that you kind of define your own work routine, which kind of leads to a happier life, isn't it?
So yeah, David, what I'm interested in is to understand what's special about fractional marketing, or is it a new term for an old thing? So, for example, one of my associates, he's an external CFO. So you don't have a CFO in your business. You use him a day a week, a day a month, or whatever you need him to do.
Yeah.
So to me, he's a CFO. He's an external CFO. Could we call him a fractional CFO?
Sure. So I think that's the same, basically.
Is there anything about a fractional marketing approach that is different to what I've grown up with? And I couldn't afford to have a full-time marketing team, but I went to XYZ company who did marketing for me. Or is it more about we've identified it, we call it that, and we specifically work towards that? So I'm just trying to clarify that for my own benefit.
So I would say there's a lot of parallels. So I think using the word fractional is very specific to the SaaS industry. So if your friend is an external CFO, it probably using that terminology is probably specific for the industries that he prefers to work with. So for example, maybe in the finance sector, right? If you came into the finance sector and called yourself a fractional CFO, they probably wouldn't identify, right, as they need to. So I would say the reason the word fractional is used here is because it basically covers a few things, maybe a couple things. So one is, you're getting us for the fraction of the time, a fraction of the cost, and we're willing to come in, roll our sleeves up, and, pardon my French, get shit done. Whereas consultants, for example, they come in there, they'll advise you, and then they leave. Where did they go? Well, fractional, we're there the whole time. We'll come in. One of the biggest things about our role and the partners that we work who are also fractional CMOs and fractional marketing ops guys is that we've identified that 9 times out of 10, plus minus, when we go into a business, no matter the size, they could be doing 10 million a year, they could be doing 50 million a year, they don't have a strategy in place. It's this shocking thing. So one of the things about bringing in a fractional leader, for example, a head of content, right? What does a head of content do? Well, first of all, you have probably junior content guys there, and nobody's building a strategy. They're just busy. Everyone's busy. Busy doing what? Well, the boss said I need to do this. Well, how does that fit into a strategy? Does that help you, accomplish the goals that you set out for this quarter or this year? I think when you hear the word for us, for fractional marketers in this specific industry, it tells you exactly what to expect. Of course, we're still educating the market, and I think a lot of the market already understands. So when they bring us on as a fractional marketing team or fractional content team, they know that it's not just me coming in, but we're airdropping expertise in overnight. So that's about it.
So given that I'm comfortable with it's the same thing with a different term, Sarab, I believe in this sort of thing for many, many years. Back in my younger day, I was supposedly a product manager or a salesman for a company, but I would go and work in there one day a week or one day a month or one day a quarter in the general manager's role or the marketing manager's role or the sales manager's role. I could call myself a fractional sales manager.
That's it.
And the purpose of what us older guys call external and the younger guys call fractional is you can't necessarily afford a full-time team, or you don't necessarily need a full-time team, or even if you had a full-time team, you would have somebody for 40 hours that has a certain skill set. If, on the other hand, you engage a fractional marketing company, and that within that fractional marketing company, they have the gig workers, as David and I were talking about earlier, then he could draw on 10 different people in marketing with 10 different areas of expertise and channel that in. So my thoughts on it, to answer your question, which is probably a first, Sarab, because I'm actually answering a question for you on the podcast as opposed to raising another one, is I fully support it and have done for probably 40 odd years of my life. And it's a wonderful way for companies to not only grow to an area where they can't currently afford a full-time to then go to full-time, but even in a full-time scenario, you can bring in a fractional to get a project done. And as David said, which is not a swear word, it's a technical term.
Yeah.
You bring a fractional in, get shit done, and then they can move on.
That's it. I think there was a perfect segue there, and I'll kick myself if I don't say it. Well, I'll start. There's two things basically. So one is you just touched on the future without maybe realizing it. So we realized about a year and a half ago, that there was a certain trend in the market for B2B SaaS. And it was that the most seasoned guys in the market don't want full-time jobs. We also don't want full-time jobs in the sense that I do have a full-time job, but you know what I mean. Yep. So a few great minds and myself, we got together, and now Red Basket has a co-venture that's launching the beginning of September. And we basically doubled down on the idea of fractional marketers. So we have a fractional CMO who's had several successes, a fractional marketing ops and everything digital guy who's had tons of successes, and also product marketing. Product marketing is a tricky one in the market to fill. When you find one, you have to hold on to them. Never let them go. Because if you need to find a new one, they're not there. There's like a handful of them. In comparison to other types of marketers, there's not many out there. So we have one, plus the content piece. We've come together, of course, and my co-founder, and we're launching a company called Purple Pickle starting September. We've identified, along with the need for filling fractional roles, as you said, George, you don't have to, first of all, you don't have to spend 6 months looking for a full-time role, right? Because that's costly. You've got your talent acquisition or HR team looking for talent. You've got now 2 applicants. What happens if they're both terrible? We don't need to do that. You also don't need to fire anyone, right? So when you bring on a fractional person, they're good or they're not, they get it or they don't, they're out the next day. But generally what you'll find is it's cost efficient. You can, the time to onboarding is much, much faster because they already get it, what you're doing. They've done the research before you even airdrop them in. So yeah, I mean, we detected this a long time ago, and now it's time for us to put our money where our mouths are and see if this is really what the market wants. We all still strongly believe that this is the way it's going. So, along with what I said earlier, when we go into businesses, there's no strategy. It's very much true. You think it's a one-off every time you see it, but then at the end of a couple of years, you go, nobody has a strategy in place. So Purple Pickle will be offering both. Basically, we go in and we build your strategy. When you have the strategy, all the leaders sign off on it. It's chief revenue officer, CEO, whoever else. They sign off on this strategy, and then you say, well, look. The problem is you have a gap here and a gap here to execute on this strategy. Now let's parachute drop, as long as you want, some fractional experts who can help you get it done. So now you not only have a strategy, but you're executing against it. So exciting stuff, a little bit hectic time, but I'm really excited about this Purple Pickle going live as well. So
yeah, have you identified any specific scenarios where fractional content marketing or head of content marketing really fit well? Are there any specific scenarios where you feel that you should have a fractional content of marketing and where you shouldn't have it?
Yeah. So one is maybe you're too early stage and you haven't even decided how to go to market. I'm so sorry, go to market should come at some point, but you don't know if there's a product there, and you don't know if there's a product market fit. You shouldn't bring in a fractional CMO until you know that, okay, well, I think this is a viable service or product, and I think it's really time to go full scale into the market. That's when you should probably bring that person in. Content, like you don't need a head of content. You probably just need a blogger, right? You need somebody to write that blog, to start educating on your website. You don't need to fully invest, and you can get those people fractionally as well. So, because early stage companies aren't known for having just tons of cash flowing out of every ear and every corner. It also doesn't make sense if you already have a fully baked marketing team. You have, if your company's doing 20 million and you already have 10 marketers, you don't probably need it. What we have discovered though, you could have 10, 15, 20 marketers working in the business. You could be doing 20 million in revenue, but you don't have a CMO. So again, you have this problem where everyone's busy for the sake of being busy, but it's not really helping drive that growth. Then you might want to consider bringing on a fractional head of content.
So what sort of an ICP are we talking about? So how big are these companies, and are these coming from specific sectors? So do you see synergies between different sectors, or do you see it's like a common thing across sectors where you need fractional marketing in any kind of organization that you go to?
So for us, our sweet spot, even though it's B2B SaaS, so our ICP is anywhere. Now we have a couple ICPs. So for example, Red Basket, we sell content bundles, right? So that means like if you're a relatively new startup on the market and you need some content, you can buy it. We'll give you 4 blogs per month and an ebook per quarter to help you with lead gen. Easy peasy, right? But we write good stuff. It's pretty important to do that. The other part is, ICP is a bit different when they need a fractional head of content. They can have a team in place. My job is to now come in and build a strategy and lead their existing team, identify their strengths and weaknesses, and figure out who's going to do what. And this is pretty common. That ICP should be doing about 10 million to up to, let's say, 30 million right now. And then Purple Pickle's ICP is a bit different. That's probably about 20 to 50 million. We don't necessarily want to work with corporates. We love the B2B, like startup, scale up, Series A type businesses. So basically,
you had a question, George?
What's that?
No, I'm saying you had a question, George.
Yeah, so I was about to say earlier on that you can have a fully fledged team. You can have your head of marketing who knows what they're about and all of that, but they're just moving into a different realm that they don't know about. So one of my claims to fame in my early career was I launched WD-40 and Armour All into the grocery trade in Australia. Now, prior to me doing that, WD-40 and Armour All was well established in the hardware trade, and it was well established in the automotive trade. And because WD-40 and Armour All came out of Hawker Pacific, which was a division of Hawker de Havilland, and it was a very blokey business, and they could do all of that sort of stuff. So when they went in to try to get into the grocery trade, they had 3 or 4 goes, and they failed. Each time they went in and they just failed. Now, number one, it was being controlled by hawkers in America. And so that was an American trying to tell somebody in Australia how to sell. That's as idiotic as somebody in Australia coming to America and thinking he understands the local lay of the land. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
The second thing was that it was a bunch of blokes who knew that this WD-40, it's all about bloke stuff, trying to get into a grocery market. And in Australia, blokes didn't go grocery shopping in those days. The women did. It was very much woman, groceries, man, hardware. You didn't have women going in to hardware stores, and you didn't have men going into grocery stores like you do now. So I came in and I picked up I was the Australian agent, so the whole of Australia for anything other than hardware and automotive. Now, the first thing I did was I asked them to produce a little 75-gram can, which was available but wasn't being sold out here. And I needed, I think from memory, this is going back some probably 35, 36 years ago now, but I needed $20,000 for an advertising marketing campaign. Now, Hawker Pacific, Hawker Siddeley, Hawker de Havilland build aeroplanes and boats and rockets and go to the moon and all that sort of stuff. But God forbid that some bloke from Australia would say that he wanted 25 grand for advertising this stuff. Well, that wasn't the big problem. The big problem was I had to have a meeting with the board. And they said, well, what are you going to spend all of this money on? I said, advertising in magazines. We already advertise in magazines. I said, no, not the ones I do. Well, where are you going to advertise it? I said, oh, Women's Weekly, New Idea.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. Thank God I didn't know how to do mouth to mouth, because I would have had to have resuscitated the buggers. Now, when I launched it, I had the 75-gram can in the haberdashery section. And I had the 400-gram can, which was the bloke's can, in the hardware section, which in those days was about 2 shelves and a bit of dust. And I had people go around to each store, and it said, if your husband would like a can of this, the 400-gram can is in aisle whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Nice.
Now, to the point here, Sarab, Hawker Pacific and Hawker de Havilland didn't need George Mavros to sell planes or boats or anything like that. They didn't need me to sell WD-40 to blokes in hardware stores. But using David's terminology, I was a fractional marketer, distributor, to get them into an area that they didn't have the expertise. So without me, they had 5 goes and got nowhere. With me, I got 100% in every single major with the first call through.
Wow, it's impressive. And there hasn't been a squeaky door in Australia since.
100% right.
That's a great story.
Our first advertising campaign was how you remove grease from wooden cupboards and how you make zippers work on a pair of pants.
Wow.
And I'm serious. It was looking back. I wished I had a bloody mobile camera that I could have taken a video. These blokes were beside themselves. Did he just say we're advertising in a woman's magazine? A woman's magazine?
But you know what they say about nightclubs, right? If you want to get all the men to go there and buy drinks all night long, make very good feminine cocktails, because when the women go there, the men will definitely follow.
Yeah.
Right.
And what happened, Sarab, was the 75-gram can started to do this, and the 400-gram can was very slow, and then the 400-gram cart started to do this, and then the 400-gram continued to grow, and the 75-gram can just about disappeared. And we took it off range. And the reason for that was she went home, told him that she'd bought this WD-40. No bloke was going to put a 75-gram can in his garage. So, woman, get me the 40. So what happened was 175-gram can equaled around about 3 400-gram cans, because David and me and you, if we were that old bloke in that time, we'd say, well, get me one for the car, get me one for your car, get me one for the garage.
Screw it, just give me a case. Yeah. I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to fix the neighborhood. I need a case.
Yeah.
Basically.
And you can actually see the line, and the 75 does this, and the 400 just went like that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting stuff. But you just reminded me I need to go buy some WD-40. So in essence, let's see if I'm a good marketer or not. Let me make the connection between WD-40 and fractional marketing. Okay. Sometimes in business, especially in marketing, the wheels get a little squeaky, right? And they're just the gears are grinding, but it's not going like a well WD-40 machine. So you airdrop or you spray on the right fractional marketer at the right time in the right role, and everything starts to move smoothly.
Nicely lubricated.
We did it. Full circle. We did it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to wrap up with today's episode.
In your case,
Yeah.
you're gaining a lot of experience in LMS 365, right?
Genza.
You're gaining a lot of experience in certain aspects of selling, and you're gaining a lot of knowledge in what is still a SaaS type operation, right? Now, if I take you out of there and plug you into building boats, you will have an understanding of certain aspects of sales and certain aspects of marketing, but you won't have a product knowledge understanding, and you won't understand why people that own a sailboat just put thousands of dollars down the drain and they say it's okay. So then David is an expert that's been in the boating industry for 40 years. You bring him in, you take him with you, and then it works.
Yeah.
And that to me is what fractional anything's about.
Yeah.
I think that's why the onboarding is so important, right? Where you gain understanding on your customers, your market. And if you're working with an expert during that onboarding phase, you already have the skills, right? You can still change companies. You have the sales skills or you have the marketing skills, but you can always gain insights into how to sell to a specific customer base on the basis of gaining the market knowledge, because every market is different. Every customer base is different. So you kind of have to understand the psychology.
You touched on a really good point that we hadn't touched on yet, and I'll keep it brief. When you do bring on a fractional marketer, one of the greatest things about doing that, I would say. So if you take a look at us, you're talking about 70 plus SaaS businesses, not at Red Basket, but together combining at Purple Pickle. That's a lot of experience. We're working across clients, and all that knowledge goes right back into your business. Whereas if you have a full-time employee, they're only gaining the experience from within the business. So they may not be growing as quickly as they would if they're just working at scale across multiple businesses.
Yeah.
So it's a great way of like catching. It's a net, catching all that knowledge. And while you have them, they're not only learning your business, they're still bringing in new energy from all the other businesses they're working with. And it's pretty important, I'd say.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Seems like my job is in threat. But how would you address that question of when people might say that fractional marketing can be a threat to the jobs of some people? Not saying in a literal sense, but I hope you understand the question where it's coming from.
So there are still a lot of businesses looking for full-time employees. There's this ideology that we need them here full-time. We need them here to fully be vested in the business. We need them to only focus on us. And it's still the majority of the market. Now, I'll give you another example. There's a business I was talking to yesterday. They're based in the UK. They don't need somebody full-time, but they want somebody to come into the office twice a week. That's not for us, right? I'm not going to get on an airplane and fly over to the UK every 2 weeks. Or every week, twice. So there are still some things there that, we can't just overtake the whole market. But there are companies that are willing to have remote, knowledge-based kind of experts. And by the way, I don't like the word consultant. I get allergic to it because one of the CEOs we worked with said, I can buy consultants a dime a dozen. They come in here, they make a mess, and then they leave. Now, you guys are different. You come in and you get shit done. So I think the term consultant is slowly fading out, and I've noticed it more and more, not just in marketing as well. Consultants offer ideas, but they don't actually roll their sleeves up in many cases.
Well, I would take exception to that because that would mainly be because he's not dealt with a professional consultant.
Could be.
If a consultant takes your watch and then charges you to tell you the time, he's a con man. If the consultant can actually show you why you shouldn't even have a watch or how you can actually use the watch to get directionals and other things about it. So you can use a watch as a compass if you know how to do it. Then he's of assistance. So the problem is that the term, like many other terms in business, I'm a business coach, and I'm very proud to be a business coach, and I've consulted to people, and people say to me, I say, what do you actually do? And I say, well, I do business coaching, advising. I can be a consultant. I can work as a mentor. And they go, well, that's all the same, isn't it? And I say, well, obviously you know nothing about the industry.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Right? No. And it's like if you want to go back in time, right? A salesman for a company went out and sold for the company and would go around and take orders. A sales representative, which every salesman started to be called, was quite a different position. Because if a salesman told you there was a 15% discount and there really wasn't, the company could refuse it and say, my salesman made a mistake. If a sales representative said the same thing, the company was duty bound to do it because he was a representative of the company. But then nobody liked the term salesman anymore, so we all became sales representatives. But then I wanted to be something different, so I became a business development manager, a customer experience manager, a customer journey manager. All these terms, and it all comes down to what are you doing? Sales, marketing, and a role.
Yeah.
So not all, despite what your client said to you, not all consultants are bad. The same as not all bankers embezzle. Not all military people shoot innocent people, and not all presidents promote different things.
Yeah. True. Good point. I think there's a lot of words that can get tarnished. Actually, I don't like official titles in our company. I didn't want to be CEO. I was a CEO of a company I owned in the past where I had to wear suits to work sometimes.
Yeah, that's the pit.
I felt like somebody very small was choking me all day. But so my official title in Red Basket, I think it's like a customer success wizard. So with the customers I do work closely with, I really make sure that they get the bang for their buck. So, yeah. But I came from sales, George. I was in sales far longer than I've been a marketer, and I've been a marketer for a very long time. So, yeah, I think sales helped me.
Even understand the difference between sales and marketing.
And I was a salesperson. I didn't need any name change. I was happy going out, knocking on doors, sales, hitting my quotas and everything else. So,
yeah.
So, David, I'm just concerned about the time and mindful about your time as well. So, do you want to wrap up today's episode with 2 or 3 takeaways that people can learn about fractional marketing, just to sum it up on what we have discussed in the last half an hour or so?
Sure. So I think fractional marketing is fractional roles in B2B SaaS, so startups and scale-ups. It is the future. It's already here. Now it's just a matter of like aligning that terminology so everyone says, "Oh, I'm not a gig worker. I'm actually a fractional worker." I think gig worker also just has an immature connotation to it. I didn't give it that, but I think people expect lazy people who want to only work from a beanbag chair 1 hour a day. So I think fractional gives it some level of professionalism. I also think that maybe another diamond to kind of sparkle throughout people's minds could be that the B2B startups aren't going anywhere. Startups are not going anywhere. It's okay to not want to work for only one because look, they're volatile. You could have a job, pays you great money today, gone tomorrow. So if you're one of those unfortunate people who've suffered recently from all the layoffs that are going through the market, it's a recurring theme, by the way. Give it a try. Try to be fractional. If you know a bunch of startups, talk to all of them. I can help all of you and see how that pans out for them and yourself. Might be a good fit. And maybe a third thing is that it's always difficult, but it's always important to look 3 to 7 years down the line, which is what we at Red Basket have always tried to do. Try to look down the line, what's coming. The big topic in the market in general globally is AI, right? So you can either fight against it or leverage it. Which side do you want to be on? I'm just talking about from a business perspective. I'm not talking about military usage and things like this. But try to always think ahead, right? I think this will put most people, if they follow these three things, in a pretty good position.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you highlighted was really good, because a lot of people, when they hear terms like freelancers, fractional marketing, and also AI, as you talked about, that Gen AI will come in the next 3 years, will come replace all your jobs. One of the interesting points that I was discussing last week, because I attended a learning and development symposium in a place called Hunter Valley. It's like 2-hour drive from Sydney, up north. So one of the things they were saying is that not all the jobs will be replaced by Gen AI, but what you have to do is you have to continuously learn and upskill yourself and adapt yourself with the new technology. So if you're open to learning, if you're open to upskilling yourself, and if you're open to having technology as a partner with your job, your job can't be replaced. But if you say, I don't want to learn anything new, I don't want to learn new technologies, I don't want to adapt with the new environment, that's the time when you should feel scared, because you're not willing to learn, you're not willing to upscale, you're not willing to adapt yourself with the upcoming technologies. Because that's the point. If a technology can do certain bits of your job, then you're no longer required for that bit of job. Now you need to see what you can do in that job that the technology can't do for you, right?
That's right. And actually you can
Which
expand.
is,
If you start to learn what to automate or what to leverage an AI, then it opens up several more opportunities for you on, okay, good. I've been dying to get better at this. Now I can go do that. So yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's like computers, right? Like 20 plus years ago, when computers came and people said, oh, our jobs will go away because the computer is here to do everything, will calculate stuff, do this, do that. But
When I
here
was
we
a
go, we have
sales
got
guy,
new set of jobs.
I was using a word processor begrudgingly back when I was a sales guy. So yeah, this world is evolving very rapidly right now. And it's like accelerating, it's multiples of acceleration each year as it passes. It's mind-boggling. But because of that, the amount of startups that keep coming to market because of new technologies is insane, right? So anyways, yeah.
Any final comments from you, George, except calling David Young and answering all my questions on time?
Which I appreciate, by the way, George.
Look, to put it in another way so that people might be able to get their head around this. We've had fractional in play ever since I started business and beforehand. We had a fractional real estate salesman. Nobody employed a real estate salesman full time until they needed to sell their house. And they couldn't learn everything about selling a house. So you got a real estate agent. We have fractional medical services, because nobody employed a doctor full time, but when they needed it, you go to the GP and you buy a percentage of his bill. Now, he does that every day of every week of every month of every year for a whole heap of people. All that's happened is we've got to change a terminology, and the reason fractional has come about is because it actually makes sense into the market that you're selling. Mm-hmm. When you talk to me about a gig economy, until I started to learn the new language, I grew up in a time when you were doing a gig, you were a part of a band, and you went and did a gig somewhere, and that's how gig economy probably came into the marketplace now. That it's the same as a band coming in, do the job, do the show, move on. So it's not something to be afraid of. It's got benefits to whether you can afford a full-time or not. Then you bring in fractional. Even if you have a full-time, it can add and complement and take you to the next step. Yeah. And many a company starts with a fractional something. Yeah. And that gets them to a level where they can afford a full-time.
But that's a good point also, George, that you could, I think with fractional workers, you can either ramp up with them or ramp down, or let's say stay the same or ramp up. So that's one thing that's always great. Like, okay, well, look, the company's grown significantly over the last 6 months. What you're doing is working. We want more of that. And look, to do that, what do you need? You need more hours, and maybe you need one of your helpers to come into, so it's dynamic, which is great, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no cookie cutter. I can tell you that. It is dynamic.
Well, David, I congratulate you on getting 100% increase on your attendance to our podcast. Unfortunately, your next appearance you'll have gone backwards because it can only have increased by another 50%.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Unless we do back-to-backs next time. Which, look, I enjoy hanging out with you guys. I'm happy to do that. I'd like to check in with you guys in about a year, though, see how Purple Pickle's doing and see how I read the future to see if it's correct.
So, Rob, one other thing that I'd like to introduce here for people that are listening to this. We've spoken in the past, and I think we've done a couple of podcasts where it's come up about marketing and names and all of that. And I have said time and time and time again, the name is nothing. It's what you make it. If somebody wants to convince me that Red Basket or Purple Pickle tells me that this is what David does, they're insane. So, but I'll tell you this, you'll remember the name Red Basket, you'll remember Purple Pickle, and the next thing is you'll remember it because of what they make it. So don't worry about the name. It's exactly what you make the name.
Yeah. A name is just a name. It's all the effort you put behind the name that matters. Nike meant nothing, right? Nothing. So, yeah, good point.
Yep.
All right. Great stuff, David. Really appreciate your time again today. And I hope to see you in 1 year's time sharing another story of your new company.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much. It's awesome to hang out with you. Thank you.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.